Well, hello there. Welcome to my studio. My name is Mary Gilkerson, and I help artists learn to truly see, translate what they see onto canvas, build an engaged audience, and send that work out into the world. If this is the first time you've joined me here live, you can find out more about me over at marygilkerson.com. We're going to be talking today a little bit more about critique. We've talked about critique a little bit before in several Facebook Lives, but I wanted to dive deeper into why critiques are super important, give you a little introduction to what they are and what they aren't. So let's dive in. So what critiques are not is actually probably one of the most important things to talk about. Critiques are not fault-finding and negative judgments, which is what most of us have come to think of them as being. So all too often, people are afraid of critique because they think that they're going to be ripped to shreds, embarrassed, denigrated in front of other people, or just not get valuable feedback. So first of all, it is not fault-finding negative judgment. But the flip side to that is that doesn't mean it's sugar-coated platitudes either. So it's not fault-finding, but neither is it, oh, that's so wonderful. You just painted the best thing since Michelangelo. Neither is helpful or productive. What critique is constructive reflection. It's evaluation or merit recognition. So what good constructive critique is closing that feedback loop so that you have constructive reflective time, that you get meaningful evaluation of what you've worked on or accomplished, and the merits of what you've worked on are recognized by yourself and your peers. Now, there are lots of reasons why critiques are super important. In the first place, if you make work, whether it's paintings, it's music, it's literature, or cooking, or making a beautiful front yard, if you don't ever evaluate yourself, what you're doing, reflect on what you're doing, then you won't ever have a chance to improve. So critique is very important to lay eyes on what you've worked on objectively. So self-evaluation is the first main thing that critique is important for. It's important for feedback from outside peers. So it's super important to get feedback from other people. Another pair of eyes is a great thing for getting sort of outside the loop feedback on what you're working on. We tend to be too close to our own work to be able to evaluate it objectively. Whereas somebody else coming in can look at it without any of the past interactions that we've had with it and frustrations as we've worked on it, and really get a clear picture of what you're trying to do. Third reason critique is super important is for accountability. We are far more likely to move faster, to achieve more, to grow more quickly, and to develop greater technical skills if we include that feedback accountability component into our practice. So there are a whole lot of ways to do that. First, let's think about how we can get those critiques. Number one would be from peers, trusted peers, not just anybody off the street, and not just anybody who might just have an art background. You want to get criticism, helpful feedback from people that you trust, who are working in the same field at your level normally or a little bit ahead. And there's a reason for that. People who are a little behind you are not necessarily going to understand some of the issues that you're dealing with. So when you're trying to move yourself along faster, you want to be around people who are at least the same level or just a little bit in front of you so that you'll feel pulled along in their tailwind. So You need a trusted group of peers who can look at your work dispassionately and tell you what's going on in it. What does not work as far as how to get critiques is to go to friends and family. They love you dearly. Maybe sometimes not so much, but they love you dearly most of the time. And they're not going to want to hurt your feelings. So that sugar-coated platitude I talked about earlier is what you'll get all too often from family. Oh, that's wonderful, dear. I love that. It is spectacular. I haven't ever seen anything like it before. How many of you have ever gotten feedback like that from friends and family? And how helpful was it? Not a whole lot, was it? Yeah, it just doesn't really move you along. It's nice to boost your ego, to stroke your ego, and to make you feel confident. But if it happens too often, you know it's not really for real. And the thing is that friends and family are not going to challenge you where you need to be challenged. And that's at the heart of what a critique is supposed to do. A critique challenges you. That's how we grow, through being challenged and stretching. So if all you ever get are those sugar-coated platitudes that tell you you're wonderful, then you won't grow. You'll stay right where you are. There's no motivation to move forward. And remember, the flip side to that is that if all you ever get is the negative judgment that finds the faults, that never tells you what's working, you won't advance. You need a balance of both. What we use, what in my free Facebook group and in my membership and courses, and what I've taught for the last 30 years is something I call the critique sandwich. I've talked about it many times before in the free group, so you may have heard me talk about it before. The critique sandwich deals with starting out with something that works well. So talk about what works, and this is especially important when you're doing this for yourself, because we tend to go straight to the negative on ourselves. Start with what works well. Find at least 1 to 2 things that work super well. Then talk about what could be improved or done differently. Very important for it to be effective to have that challenge component in the middle. So it's important for that challenge to happen, but also for it to be sandwiched between what works. So talk about what works, then the challenge in the middle is what could be improved or done differently, and then wrap it up with what works again, something else that works. In all my years of teaching, I have never looked at a student artwork and not been able to find at least 2 to 3 things that work well. Our brains are hardwired to respond to positive, constructive criticism more than negative. So that challenge in the middle is not negative when it's framed this way. We need challenges, but it's important that it's in the sandwich so that you have up above what works, then the challenge, and then what could be done differently or needs improvement. So apply that to your own work and to the work of others as you are critiquing as well. If you would like to dive into that a little bit deeper, then I'm going to be doing a workshop around critique. We're going to do a critique workshop itself as our first training over in the Artwork Living Community Membership, which is the new membership that we started just about 2 weeks ago. So if you're interested in that, Google Artwork Living Community, and we'll pop the address up into the description at the top when the Zoom is over, or rather when the Facebook Live is over. But we can also talk about that more over in the free Facebook group. But I also want to give people a chance to ask any questions they might have, because we've got a great group already here tonight. I see a number of members of both the Facebook group and of our membership. So let me pull up the comments on my phone so I can see where we have some questions. And let's see. Facebook is not going to give me the most updated page. Come on, Facebook. And here we go. So, and let's see. I'm going to turn that sound down and mute it. There we go. Now I can see what everybody is saying and asking. Hey, Elizabeth, it's good to have you here. I'm going to put this right up here on the screen so I can still see y'all and answer questions at the same time. Elizabeth's been a member of the free group for a long time, and she says, I've recently witnessed great commentary on artworks. That is fabulous, Elizabeth. Where did you see that? I think it's really important. I think you can find great commentary by reading what other writers are talking about. You can also find it in artist groups. There are multiple ways to find it, but I think it helps to build your own vocabulary to do critiques if you read the way that other people are doing good critiques. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Elizabeth. That's a great point. Christine Chan says, accountability, baby. Right on, Christine. It is huge. We do so much better when we have some accountability. I would love for us to have a Fitbit for artists, because that's accountability. And Fitbit is not a nag. Fitbit just tells you what you've done over the course of a day. And it would be wonderful if we had the same kind of accountability for those of us in the artists. Pat, I'm glad that that makes sense to you. It is a super important subject. It's just one that's overlooked or avoided all too often, and there's a lot of anxiety around it as well. And Susan, you are really lucky. Susan says that her husband doesn't hold anything back, good or bad. That's excellent. I have a daughter who was trained in art as well, so she gives me critiques that aren't held back either. So you're really lucky when you have close family and friends that can do critiques. But 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work for most people. Hey, Ann Morano, it's good to have you here. And as Susan says, yeah, if you start with the bad, you get closed off. And that's just a normal human response. When you start with something negative, it is a natural response to get defensive. So even if you're not intentionally becoming defensive, you shut down a little bit and you don't hear what the other person has to say. So be careful with that. And yes, Christine, that sandwich really works. So Ginger, I'm loving that that works for you too. She says, I always taught 2 to glow and 1 to grow. That is awesome. I like that phrase too. That is a really super good one. Hey, Denise Benny, it's good to see you. And hey, Stephanie and Deepa Kumar, it's good to have you here. Yeah, I really want a Fitbit, Susan. I don't know how we're going to do that. Maybe some kind of app that tracks how often you pick up a paintbrush or a paint knife. That would work. It would be fabulous. Oh, you are lucky. Now, Susan's saying in the comments that her husband has a music background, and that's one reason he's such a helpful critic. I don't think that's unusual at all. So if you don't have access to, unusual at all for somebody in a parallel career to be able to do it. If you don't have access to a group of visual artists, go find some performing artists, because they speak the same language. It might be a little bit different dialect, but it's still the same language. And you can get great feedback from people in the rest of the arts. It doesn't have to be visual arts. So check that out as well. Anne says, when I take an online course, the instructor doesn't give critique. I'm disappointed. What do you think? I still can learn from them, but critique is most important to me to grow. There are all kind of courses out there, Anne, and I think that there are 2 factors that help in learning. Critique is one, that feedback loop, and the other is community for accountability. Studies have shown over and over again that learning is increased, online learning is increased when there's feedback, specifically from somebody who's a little ahead of you or far ahead of you, which might be your instructor, and also a community who's working with the same challenges moving forward. So my own model for teaching tends to include both of those. I've tried those sort of self-directed courses before. They tend to be called things like self-paced or on your own. They have different names, different instructors use. And the lower price courses tend to be that way. So sometimes if you talk to the instructor, you can get a critique add-on. They'll have a separate one-on-one component that you can pay a little bit of extra for. I think some instructors are trying to make their teaching accessible, so they're afraid that if they include the one-to-one critique, which takes a lot of time, that they are going to have to charge more than people will be able to pay. So my guess is that's probably one reason why your instructor is doing that. But check around. You can find some individual instruction, but I would go and ask that particular instructor if they do one-to-ones. Hey, Stacy Miranda, it's good to see you. Irene says, is there an online resource to solicit specific and individualized constructive criticism for our art? There are all kinds of online resources for that, Irene. In the free Artwork Living Facebook group, it's a free community that is predominantly peer run. So you can post work in there, and there are literally thousands of other artists in there. And most of that group is extremely good at giving feedback and support. We don't allow people to be mean and bullying. Bullying has no place in critiques. So we boot people out when they do that. So that's a safe place to get some feedback. And again, that's a free option. Now, the membership, the Artwork Living community membership, the paid membership, has a section that's just for feedback. So one whole topic is just where people can post their painting to get feedback from the group. And then we have an opportunity to get feedback from me. We do monthly Q&A critiques, and we're getting ready to do one of those in 2 weeks in the group. But there are plenty of people who do one-on-one critiques, one-off critiques, so that's an option. But I think finding a group is one of the best options. Signing up for a course where they do include some kind of feedback loop in there is important. So there are all kind of different levels of critique as well. So think about it from this direction. There is a critique that is just a few comments on what is working well. That goes from the critique sandwich, you know, the thing that's working well, the challenge, and another thing that's working well. That could be no more than 3 sentences. That's a very short critique. To a full-fledged one-to-one critique, which could take a half an hour. So it just depends. There are all kind of different varieties of those. But my advice when people want to find or get a one-to-one critique is to find an artist whose work you respond to, check them out, make sure that the way that they talk to students or talk to other artists is compatible with the way that you learn, and then see if they offer one-to-one critiques. But I have many, many peers that do that as well. I'm not the only one out there who's teaching by a long shot. But I think it's super important to get feedback from people that you feel some sort of connection to, and where they match up with you, where there's alignment there. I also think it's important to study with more than one person. I don't think anybody should study with just one person. You need to get lots of different viewpoints. You become a more solid artist when you do that. So let's see. I think I skipped something there. No, I didn't. Bob Nulf says, I love sharing Robert Henri's The Art Spirit with students. I do too. That's one of my favorite books. I got another copy of that a couple of years ago at a used book sale, and I couldn't believe anybody dumped it into a used book sale, but I scarfed it up really fast. He says in there, it includes his critiques of his students' work and comments on his contemporary European artists. And I think that's a great example of fabulous criticism. I'm glad you brought that up, Bob. I think Robert Henri talks about and writes about, models really good criticism. So those are wonderful sources to go back and look at so that you can begin developing your own way of talking to other artists, peers, and students. So fabulous mention there. Thank you, Bob. I love that one. That's a good one. And hey, Thomas and Irene, it's good to see y'all. So if you have any other questions, pop them into the comments, and I'm going to be checking back in again a little bit later just to catch up on anything that might have come in after that. But remember, critique sandwich, what works, the challenge, and another thing that works. That's the way to really begin to build feedback that people can hear and that can become productive and constructive. That is super important. Thank y'all for joining me here today, and I would love to have you join either the free Facebook group or our new membership. So you can check out the link above once we have that link in there right after the Facebook Live, and we will be happy to answer any other questions. Oh, Deepa says, can you please suggest an outdoor easel? Deepa, I use several different ones myself. It really just depends. It's one of those awful answers. It just depends. If you are going on a hike and you need to carry it and it's going to be a long walk, you want to have the least amount of weight possible. So you want to get the lightest easel pochade box that you can. The lightest one that I have found is the Open Box M. And I have a 10 by 12, I think it is. That is about a pound and attaches directly onto a tripod, which is very, very lightweight. I can put that into a small backpack along with my paints, slide the tripod in, and I still am only carrying about 3.5 pounds. So I really highly recommend the Open Box M if you're going to be doing a lot of walking. The next lightest one is the Day Tripper. I really like the Day Tripper because it gives you a little bit more space to mix. So I have all of these because I'm an easel addict. Then I love the, which one is that? I'm having a complete brain meltdown. It's a hot day here in South Carolina, so my head is kind of going, bleh. Oh, I'm having a complete, it's the Art Essentials. It's the Coulter box. My brain finally kicked in. I've got a Coulter box that I adore as well. That tends to be my go-to easel when I'm painting outside and not having to walk. I have a small Coulter box that stays in my car and doesn't really have very much weight. I have a larger backpack that it can fit into, and also the Day Tripper can fit into that as well. So those are the ones I recommend: the Open Box M, the Day Tripper, and the Coulter box. Those three are absolutely fabulous. Then, yeah, thank you, Christine. It's a total brain meltdown. Susan said, what's the best way to store your paints in the studio? Where did it go? I have stashed it under a box, but I have a box that looks like a Tupperware box, and you drop the palette down in that. It's a palette box, and seal it, and then the paint stays open in there for quite a while. So check that out. Any of the palette boxes work really, really, really well. So Stacy says she loves her Strata. I know lots of people have a Strata and really adore them. So I think the Stratas work well and are fairly light. I just have not been venturing into any of them that are metal, just because of really preferring to mix paint on top of wood. I think that's my big hang up on the Strata. So you're welcome, Deepa. Hi, Eileen. She says, I'm trying to use a cigar box, but not sure how to keep the lid open and supported. You have to get some special hinges to put on a cigar box, Eileen. You're going to have to adapt it, and you can use hinges that, you know, little like piano hinges that have a screw in there that tighten. You can get what are basically screen door hinges that you put on the back of that that'll keep it open, but you really have to adaptively use the cigar box. I haven't done that to the one that I use, because when I'm holding it, I'm just holding it in my lap and it stays open. My left hand thumb holds it open, and so it's just not a big issue. But if you really want to prop it open, then the hinges that you would put on a screen door work super well for that. So you have to go hang out at Lowe's or Home Depot and find some of those hinges to keep the lid open. Yeah, Michael, I agree. A large Tupperware container is tight and seals super well. I'm going to lean this way and you'll be able to, let me see if I can do that. You can see the box that's back here. Let me turn around. This is my pallet box. You can see the blue lid, and it's just like a Tupperware container that holds that shut. So check those out, and that will hold your paint really securely. So once again, thank y'all for joining me. It's been great having you here this evening. I hope you have a wonderful day tomorrow, and happy painting, everyone. If you get a chance to join us over in the membership, we would love to have you, where we're going to be doing our first training on Tuesday, diving into a workshop on critiques and getting more structure around your critiques in more depth. So we'd love to have you over there. Take it easy, everyone, and happy painting. Bye-bye for now.